の時の DA のドロー映像。殺されたのはこの4人だ。これが犯人に流出して顔がバレてたんだ。
Welcome to Ikoshun Recreates, where I attempt to recreate pieces from film and TV shows that are worn or inspired by different characters in order to put my crochet skills to the test and see if I can actually bring them to life. Without further ado, let's get into episode 8.
Does she survive? Lucy Gray in the song. The footprints.
Maybe she flew away.
I'm sure she's out there somewhere. She's a survivor. But it's a mystery, sweetheart. Just like me.
Lucy Gray is one of the main characters in A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. In the film, she wears this crochet bikini when swimming in the lake with Snow and a couple other people from her district. The bikini isn't shown all that much, yet I knew I wanted to make it the second I saw it. Because it wasn't shown all that much, there wasn't many screenshots that I could take of the bikini. Thankfully, there were photos of it online, so using those photos plus the screenshots of Lucy helped me put everything together. For the top, it looks like it's made with your basic crochet bra cups stitched together with double crochet in between them. I'm not sure if the top is decreasing in the middle or if it's just like that when you wear it, but I'm deciding on adding some decreases just to make it look more accurate to the photos. There's a mesh border around the entire top, and the back, as seen on Lucy, is all mesh as well. On the straps and the bottom of the top, it looks like there's been elastic added to it and then wrapped with the yarn, and then tiny ruffle stitches on the row after. For the bottoms, they were looking a little bit complicated, but I decided to break them down into sections. The first section is going to be the middle part that starts in the middle of the stomach and decreases to fit the crotch area and then increases to cover the butt. Then the next two sections are just regular rectangles that get attached to the middle section with mesh stitch. Then at the top, everything is connected to fit the waist with double crochet, mesh stitch, and then another wrapped elastic band. With that in mind, it's time to create Lucy Gray's bikini. For the bikini, I'm using Hobby's rainbow cotton yarn with 3mm hook, which made me a bit nervous since this is the first time I'm ever using a small hook. Ever. Mainly because I avoid them at all costs due to them being hard to work with, but so far it wasn't as bad as it usually is for me. I started with the 2 bra cups since they were easy, and I've done bra cups a bunch of times. While I worked on them, I listened to a couple of albums to get to my 365 albums this year goal, which I've reached 144 albums so far. I loved Clairo's new album. It was right up my alley, and Anderson .Paak's album with No Worries was really fun to listen to. While listening to Not Tight by Dami and JD Beck, it started to rain, and rain plus chill music plus crocheting equals the ultimate good mood. After I finished the cups, I worked a decrease in the first 2 stitches of the start of the row. In the photo, it looked like the bra is kind of getting smaller in the middle, so I thought decreasing would be the best way to replicate that. I continued to work down the row until the beginning of the round section, and instead of working around it like normal, I chained 2 and turned my work. Row 7, I worked with normal double crochets until the last 2 stitches, which is a decrease. Then after the decrease, I chained 2, turned my work, and worked another decrease in the first 2 stitches. I continued this until I finished row 12. After, I attached my yarn to the other side of the bra cup and did the exact same thing with the decreases and the same amount of rows, which was enough to fit to my back the same way it did on Lucy. Once the bra cups were done, I cut a long tail at the end of the second cup and then used that to sew the 2 together. Then I was ready to do the back. I first started by attaching my yarn to the bottom of the bra and then chaining 3. After, I skipped 1 stitch and then in the second stitch worked a double crochet. After each double crochet, I chained 1, then skipped a stitch and worked a double crochet into the next stitch. I repeated that until the end of the row, and there I chained 1 and turned my work to work a single crochet into every stitch, including the spaces. After 3 rows of that, I made a chain of 51 and then attached it to the other end of the top. I had no idea what I was doing here, but I slip stitched up the sides a couple of times before chaining 1 and then working a double crochet into the chain I just made. Then I worked the mesh stitch I did earlier until the end of the row. While I was doing the mesh back, I tried it on just to see how it was going, and of course it was way too big, so I decided to take it apart. So I took off 3 sides from both cups and then sewed it together again, and then I did the 3 rows of the mesh stitch like I did before, and for the back I did a total of 35 chains, and then I slip stitch onto the other side. but for the back, I'm doing something different than how I showed. So say for example, I just finished a single crochet row and then I slip stitched to where the single crochet row is on the front, and instead of slip stitching up more, I'm gonna chain 3 and then go all the way down with the double crochets. But then I'm not gonna just slip stitch right here. I'm gonna slip stitch to where the double crochets are on this front side. So if you can see right here, they're aligning because I'm slip stitching where each of the tops are. So I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but if the single crochet row is right here on the front, then I'm gonna slip stitch the single crochet row onto that single crochet row. And then for the double crochet rows, I slip stitch that onto where the double crochet row is. I hope that makes sense. The next day I tried on the finished top and it fit perfectly after fixing all of my mistakes, so I went ahead and took some of my elastic and measured where the top would end on my torso and then cut that amount of elastic out. Then I measured how much I'd need for the straps to make it sit in a certain way and cut that out as well. For each of the elastic straps, I worked single crochet around them, and this took forever, you guys. Like, I can't. Honestly, the initial part of getting it started was a process, if I've ever seen a process, but the rest of it was a breeze. A very slow and not so gentle breeze. After wrapping the whole thing, I attempted to add it to the top, but it was not working at all. So I was like, let me see if I can use a tapestry needle to add it, and nope, didn't work. I even tried single crocheting another layer onto the elastic, but that wasn't working, and I was trying so hard not to cry from being so frustrated. I ended up laying on the floor for like 20 minutes because my back and my leg was hurting, and that triple combo was just defeating. Then I thought, let me just make a regular strap and then wrap the elastic on there. So I attached my yarn and chained 57, slip stitched it to the back of the top, then worked 3 rows of single crochet so that the strap was thick enough to fit the elastic. Since I was at it, I did it to the other strap and the bottom of the top as well. After that, then I used a tapestry needle to wrap the elastic onto the top, and it was a lot easier and calmed my stress down a bit. Now I just had to do this for probably the next 3 hours. So if you can tell, I took off the elastic. I'm not gonna wrap the string around, like, it's just gonna take forever. Like, it took me like 20 minutes just to get from like right here to here, and I was like, yeah, no, I can't do that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm literally just going to finish the parts that I need to do. So I need to do this little mesh border within another single crochet border, and then I'm gonna work on the bottoms, and then after everything's done, when I'm getting ready to sew this fabric inside, I'm just gonna sew the elastics on with it just to make it easier, because I'm not about to be stressing about putting an elastic in 3 times by wrapping it. Like, that's not happening. So I did what I said I was gonna do and made a mesh border around the entire top of the bikini and then a single crochet border after. I went straight into working on the bottoms by first chaining 35, which was good enough for the first section, which is near my crotch area, I think. I worked double crochet rows until I can honestly figure everything out. I went from decreasing to taking it apart to adding more rows just to take it apart again. It took me a couple of hours to really figure out how many rows of everything I needed, but thankfully I eventually got the results that I wanted. Basically, all I did for the middle section of the bottoms is chain 35 and then followed this pattern that I made. Once that was finally done, I did 2 side panels with the same cast on of 29 and worked them both for a total of 7 rows. I then attached the side panels to the main panel by first working 2 double crochets into each stitch on the side for 1 row. Then for the next row, I worked 1 double crochet into the middle of each double crochet increase, and then after the last row, I slip stitched the sides together, and I actually loved the look of it being slip stitched together since it looked really nice with the other stitches. After all the sides were seamed together, I got started with the borders on the bottoms, which I did this pattern for the top and then this pattern for each of the leg holes. Once the bikini was finally done, I went ahead and cut out the fabric for the inner lining. I got a spandex fabric made specifically for bikinis and swimwear, but I was kind of scared of cutting it since I've never lined anything besides bags. So I tried to pretend that I was just lining another bag and decided to just cut out around the parts where I wanted to line. And sorry if this angers any of you sewers out there, but I didn't know what I was doing, and it made me think that eventually I want to try sewing an entire outfit, but how can I do that if I'm scared to cut fabric? Cutting the fabric for the bottoms was even scarier because I didn't want to cut out fabric that I didn't need, but I didn't know how else to cut around it. I also had to cut out 2 versions of the first cut out so that it could be sewed onto both sides of the bottoms. While I was getting ready to sew the lining on, I took forever to figure out how to fold the fabric correctly. It was starting to make me get annoyed with the whole process of having to sew the sides down first and then sew the fabric onto the piece you're trying to line. But then when I actually started to sew the lining in, it became quite peaceful and I enjoyed the process again. I also sewed the elastic onto the straps of the top, and then I tried the top on and bam, I was annoyed again. I knew the color of the fabric was too bright for some reason, but I was like, it's okay, it'll work out perfectly fine. And I did want to use a color that's close to the brown yarn I used. I later checked after completing all the pieces in this episode, and apparently they sent me the wrong shade, so in the end I actually didn't choose the yellow color like I thought I did. I also noticed that there were sewing indents in the bikini too, so I just took a breath and thought of what to do. I ended up taking out the sewing job, and while doing that, I was thinking about how I felt like I don't even want to attempt to sew an entire outfit anymore, since the process just seems way too much for me when you really think about it. Maybe I'll just stick to sewing lining and bags and calling it a day, but I may change my mind in the future. After taking out the linings, I weaved in all my ends and called it a day. Here is the results of Lucy Gray's bikini that I recreated. I was pretty excited to start this as it's my first bikini. I've only made a bikini top and like a little wrap cover in the past, so this was the first time I've ever made any crochet underwear type deal. So I was pretty excited but also really nervous. When I first started, I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna work with this type of yarn, it's so small. But then immediately I was like, oh, it's not that bad. And then I was just able to crochet at the speed that I normally do. But then once I got to the part where I had to do all the mesh for the back, I was like, all right, I'm getting kind of frustrated and scared that this isn't gonna work out, but I pushed through and I did it. For the bottoms, I had to redo like the middle part a couple times just to make sure it fit properly, but that wasn't really hard or anything. It was just decreasing and increasing and stuff. And then the sides were no issue at all as well. And overall, it came out pretty nice. The one part though that I did not enjoy was having to sew in the lining. The fabric I used, it was fine. It was just like, because it's spandex, it likes to like stretch and everything, so I wasn't able to properly like cut it correctly or manipulate it the way that I want to. But also there's the fact that I just don't have much experience with adding lining to clothes. Like I've only done it with bags and everything. So I did not like that experience, and it was making me think that I just don't like sewing. But hopefully that changes, because I would love to learn how to sew and create my own clothes with the sewing machine. But right now me and the sewing machine have beef, so we're just gonna leave it at that. If I were to rate this bikini set, I would rate this 10 out of 10 Katnisses. And I say this because this honestly taught me a lot. Like I said before, I've never made a bikini ever. I learned a new skill. I was able to work with small yarn, which was always scary for me for some reason. I know how to make bottoms, like bikini bottoms now, or underwear if I want to make myself underwear with like some lining or something. And this just taught me a lot, and I analyzed the mess out of this so that it could be as accurate to Lucy's as possible, and I think it is. To complete Lucy's bikini, I used the help of Milanote, which is the sponsor of today's video. Milanote is an amazing workspace that you can use to organize any of your creative projects. While organizing all my thoughts and plans on how I was going to do Lucy's bikini, I used Milanote and had such a great time using it to brainstorm everything from what stitches I was going to use, what color I needed exactly, and just having all of my ideas all in one place was just an incredible help for me. With Milanote, you can do an array of different things that can help you with planning your creative projects. You can create different boards and subboards for the projects you're planning on working on, using their built-in templates that can give you an idea on how to organize your space, especially if it's your first time using Milanote. I think it's really cool that a lot of the templates are based on which medium you're working with, whether it be writing, graphic design, storyboarding, and so much more. Here is the board I used to plan Lucy's bikini recreation. I made a home board for basic information on the bikini, like what movie it's from, the materials I plan to use, and a little to-do list area to remember everything everything I needed to get done. I also made different subboards for the recreation, which had one being dedicated to the screenshots I took, one for brainstorming everything I was going to do exactly, and lastly, one for styling the project once it's complete. With Milanote, my project planning honestly upgraded since there's so many visual options to use, which is perfect since I'm a visual learner. I was able to add whatever links I needed right to my brainstorming board so that it's conveniently next to what I need it for. I also installed Milanote's web clipper extension, which allowed me to save any inspiration I needed for the project, which was incredibly convenient and easy to use. I just click the little Milanote save button that pops up and then choose which board I want to save it to. Then when I go into my board, my inspo photo is there waiting for me. If you're working on a crochet or knit project, you can add in a pattern PDF straight into the board, which is incredibly convenient. You can also add PNGs to decorate your page and doodle right on the page, which I think is really neat. And for someone who draws on Procreate for my designs, all I have to do is upload the design onto Milanote and it's there for me to use automatically, which is incredibly helpful. Milanote is also useful if you do collaborations, whether it be if you're working with team members on a project or if you have clients, you can easily send them your board to keep them updated with your progress and have them add notes and comments if they want something changed, and I think that's incredibly helpful. Milanote is available for free with no free trial, which I think is so awesome and great for anyone who wants to give Milanote a try. You can use the link in my description box to start brainstorming your next creative project. Thank you again to Milanote for sponsoring this video.
Just gonna ghost us?
Jade, I've been wanting to talk since we got off the island. We need to talk. It's all I can think about. I just can't do any of that right now.
Kiara is one of the main protagonists in Outer Banks, and in season 3 she wears this cute halter top to her parents' party. The halter top looked incredibly simple to make and I knew I had the exact colors in my yarn stash, so I was happy about not having to get any extra yarn to complete it. I decided to split the top into 3 sections. The first section is the part that wraps around the neck, the second section is the part that goes under the chest, and then the third section is the part that ties in the back. I went ahead and got started with the random scrap yarn I had that was as close to the top as I was getting and my 5mm hook. I started with the pink color since it was the outermost color on the top and worked 77 chains, which was enough to go from one side of the bottom of my chest, around my neck, and to the other side of my chest. I worked 1 row of single crochet down the chain, and then at the end of the chain I attached my red yarn and worked 1 row of single crochet as well. For row 3 I worked 2 rows of single crochet with my white yarn, and once I finished those I placed the project on my neck to see if it was working well, and it did shrink a tiny bit, like I had to pull it down for it to go past my chest, but I was okay with that since I was gonna connect it to the bottom panel later anyway. I worked the colors in a certain pattern, switching through each of them, some being done for 2 rows while others being done for 1 row. Here's the color pattern I made for the top. While doing so, I started watching Sex and the City for the first time since my friend has been watching it and she said she's been enjoying it, so I'm giving it a chance now. I watched the first 3 episodes and it's definitely a show about sex, and it's also definitely about a city. It's very on par with its title. I like how it switches through characters, and the way it's narrated is kind of fun too. Miranda and Sam were getting to be a bit annoying to me in the first 2 episodes, but in the 3rd one, Miranda was starting to be pretty cool. I love Carrie's hair. I just think it's the absolute cutest. And yeah, that's all I have to say about it. We'll see what I think about the show as it goes on. Here is what the top is looking like so far. I did a total of 28 rows and it is a bit shorter than it should be. Like it should be like right here, but I think this is okay because once I do the bottom part and then connect it, it's gonna like kind of stretch towards where I need it to be. If you can see, it is a bit thick, and that's just because I'm using a weight 4 yarn. Like I didn't buy any yarn for this one in particular. I just used the little scraps that I had in my closet, and thankfully they were the right colors. But if you were to do this, I would suggest getting like a weight 2 or a weight 3 yarn, and then maybe getting like a soft cotton yarn to do it, because the yarn I was using is wool and it's a tiny bit itchy around my neck. But I'm still gonna finish this because I do like how it's coming out and I think it will be really cute in the end. Yep, this was pretty easy to do. I feel like this whole project's gonna be really easy to do and pretty short in this video, but I think easy projects are okay once in a while. For the bottom half of the top, I started with the pink again and chained 53, which was only the length of half of my waist size. I went by the seams on the tank top I was wearing and just stopped chaining when they stretched to them. I then worked on the bottom section for a total of 13 rows with this color pattern. When it was done, I used stitch markers to figure out where I wanted both sections to connect, which was a bit hard to do since it just kept moving all over the place. But once they were in the right areas, I used my tapestry needle to sew the pieces together from the back of the project. I tried it on and oh my gosh, I was actually really liking it, you guys. I was scared because it was obvious I was using the wrong yarn size, but it still looks really cute to me. So I went ahead and worked on the back straps, which I decided on a chain of 83 for each, and then repeated the bottom section's color pattern. While doing the straps, I watched more of Sex and the City, and I think my favorite characters in order are Carrie, Charlotte, Miranda, and then Sam. I think Carrie is at the top because she's the narrator, but also because I really like her outfits and her hair, and she's just a really cute person to me. After I finished the two straps, I sewed them onto the ends of the bottom section, making sure that I sewed it on the inside of the top and that all the colors were matching up as I sewed it together. Once they were all put together, I weaved in my ends and my Kiara top was complete. Here is the next piece, which is inspired by Key's top and Outer Banks. Everything for this went well. The colors that I chose were perfect. The only thing is that when I tried this on, I was like, dang, I should have used a smaller yarn. And I initially was gonna buy a smaller yarn, but then I was like, I have all the colors in my closet. I can save money and just make one with the yarn that I have. But this is way too big, especially on the neck area, but it's still cute. I'm up and down with it. Like when you first put it on, it looks super bulky, like it's a whole scarf. But then if you play with it and adjust it and everything, it turns out pretty good. But yeah, it's a really cute and extremely simple project to make. It won't take you longer than a day to make it, and you can do an array of different colors and stuff. But I do recommend just use like a weight 3 yarn instead of weight 4. This is all weight 4. So I would say maybe weight 3 or weight 2 just to be safe. And then I feel like if you made this, it would be perfect. Like so perfect. If I were to rate this, I would give it a 9 out of 10. The only reason it's not a 10 out of 10, like I said, is because I should have used smaller yarn. But this was simple and easy and cute. But yeah, this is Key's top.
How have you been? Have you seen any of the Debs yet this summer?
I saw Marissa last week, but Gigi's dad got caught in some insider trading thing, and they had to sell their house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, really awful. And supposedly they're making a documentary about it, and
Nicole is one of the side characters in The Summer I Turned Pretty, and in season 2, she wears this cute crochet top when seeing Belly for the first time since last summer. I was very excited to make this top because I just knew it was gonna look cute on me since it looks cute on Nicole, and since it's summer, I thought it would just make the perfect summer top to wear. The hexagons were pretty simple to figure out. I just counted how many sections there were in each of them and then made a pattern with that, but the hardest part was figuring out how to do the mesh in the middle, but I didn't feel like figuring that out until it was time to actually do it, so I don't have a breakdown for that yet. On the top, I counted 18 hexagons, which includes 4 half hexagons. Then at the top, there's this sort of a bubble stitch for 3 rows and then a cute border around the entire top. To make the hexagons, I first started by creating a slip knot and chaining 4. I slip stitched into the first stitch of the row, chain 2, and then into the middle space I worked 10 double crochets. After, I pulled the little tail at the back to close the gap in the middle, then slip stitched into the chain 2 I did in the beginning. In the space after the first double crochet, I attached my next color, which was orange. Once it was attached, I chained 2. For this next row, I first yarned over and inserted my hook into the same space as the chain, then yarned over and pulled through. I yarned over and pulled through 2 stitches, which left 2 more loops on my hook. I repeated this step 2 more times. Once I had 4 loops on my hook, I yarned over and pulled through 3, then yarned over and pulled through 2. After, I chained 1 and repeated this for every other space. The only thing different for the rest of the spaces is that I repeated the pattern until I had a total of 5 loops on my hook. I do this since in the first space the chain counts as a stitch. At the end of the row, I slip stitched into the first stitch of the row, then slip stitched into each stitch until I reached a chain 1 gap. In that gap, I switched my color to my brown color and then chained 2. For this third row, I worked 1 double crochet into that same space as the chain. The chain counts as a double crochet. Then I chained 2 and then worked 2 more double crochets into that same space. In the next space, I worked 4 double crochets with no chain. I then repeated working 1 space with a chain 2 in between the 2 double crochets, and then 1 space with 4 double crochets with no chain. This gives the project its hexagon shape. At the end of the row, I inserted my hook into the first stitch of the row, then attached my last color, which was the pink. I chained 2 and in the same space worked a double crochet. After, I chained 2 and worked 2 more double crochets in that same space. In the next space after, I worked 2 double crochets. Then in the space in between the 4 double crochets with no chain, I worked 2 double crochets. After that, I worked 2 double crochets into the next space after the 4 double crochets. In the next space that does have a chain 2 in the middle, I worked 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and then 2 more double crochets. So for the spaces in between the sets of double crochets and the spaces in between the 4 double crochets with no chain, I only worked 2 double crochets. But then in the spaces with a chain 2, I worked a double crochet, a chain 2, and then 2 more double crochets. That way the hexagon shape can become more prominent. For the half hexagons, the first 2 rows are worked normally and the third row is worked normally until there are 7 sets of double crochets. On the 8th set, I added 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and then only 1 double crochet. Then I chained 1, cut a tail, and pulled to secure. With the pink color, I attached it to the chain 2 space in the beginning of the row and chained 2. Then I worked the row the same way I did in the full hexagon until I got to the last space of the row. In that last space, I worked 2 double crochets. Then in the top of the last stitch, added a slip stitch. Then I chained 1, cut the yarn, and pulled to secure. I spent the rest of the day making all the granny hexagons, which was a total of 18, but I didn't record much since it's just pretty repetitive, and yeah, I got them all done. I positioned all the hexagons the same way that they looked at the top, and then, well, I had no idea what to do next, because when I look at the mesh layer, or whatever it is in between the hexagons, I know that on the top and bottom of each hexagon, they're joined with single crochets, which is easy, but then on the sides, it kind of looks like it's a gradual increase when you start from the bottom, but I'm not sure exactly how I'm supposed to do that. Alright, so I think what I'm gonna do is first connect the middle hexagons together with the single crochet, and then I'll just probably make a chain and then connect the other ones, chain, connect the other ones, and then I'll go back into the chain. I'll do like double crochets, but then also single crochet into the sides of the hexagon, and then gradually do less and less double crochets until I get to the top, and then I can go ahead and do the single crochet into each all around, and then maybe work downwards from there, and then work until everything's connected. This is like literally the only idea that I have to do this, so let's see if that works. This was hard to record properly, but all I did was join my cream yarn onto the top of the bottom hexagon and then chained 1, then worked a single crochet into the top hexagon and then chained 1, and then repeated this going into every space on both hexagons, making sure to chain 1 after. The result was cool, so I kept it schmoovin' by chaining 6 and then single crocheting into the next hexagon, But then this is where I kept getting confused and had to restart a bunch of times. I was making double crochets into each chain and then single crocheting into the sides and gradually made less and less double crochets with each row, but the first result was not it, so I started over and did 2 double crochets into a couple of the chains and then tried to gradually make less and less, but that result wasn't it, so I restarted again, and my third attempt was the best in my opinion. I basically just added 2 double crochets into the first chain, then in the next 2 chains added 1 double crochet. Then in the last chain, I added 2 double crochets. I probably skipped a chain, but it's fine. I then single crocheted into the next 2 spaces on the hexagon, chained 1, and turned my work. For the next row, I worked into each space in between. So first I made a double crochet in between the 2 double crochets, then in the space after that and the space after that until I got to the end. After I single crocheted into the next 2 spaces on the hexagon, chained 1, and turned my work. Then for this row, I worked a double crochet into the first 2 spaces, skipped the middle space, and then worked a double crochet in the next 2 spaces. Then did single crochets in the hexagon again with the chain, and turned my work. Then for this row, I skipped a space, added a double crochet, skipped a space, added a double crochet, then did the single crochets into the hexagon with a chain. For the last row, I worked 2 double crochets in the middle space and then went for the single crochets in the hexagon. I think this method is the best, honestly, because I couldn't think of anything else, so after I just went straight into the other hexagon with a single crochet and then started a new row of single crochet into 2 hexagons. I'm glad I got it on the 3rd attempt because I was getting a bit frustrated and I didn't want to have that frustrated cry where you think about the fact that you spent hours and hours on something for it to not work in the end, which makes you cry even harder. And it's funny because I'll usually be listening to music or watching YouTube while I make these projects, but this was one of the first times where I needed the room to be dead silent so I could concentrate on what I was doing exactly. But yeah, I continued working on the mesh stitching until every hexagon was connected. So everything's not completely done yet, but this is what I have done so far. I put it towards my chest, and of course it's way too big on the back. Like the front part is perfect, I think, but for the back these are way too long. So what I was thinking about doing is taking these 3 off and then taking this half hexagon and connecting it right here so that this attaches here, this attaches right there, and then this attaches right there so that it kinda is close together a little bit. And then I'm gonna do the same over here. So again, take the half hexagon, place it right there. After that, I'll probably just add a little tie in the back so that I can connect, but of course I'm still gonna do the border and everything. I took off the extra hexagons and immediately worked the half hexagon onto the side with single crochets. I added an extra 4 double crochets into the half hexagon on the right side so that I could connect it properly to the other half hexagon. Then once everything was connected, I cheered and moved on to the border. For the top, I worked the same orange clusters that I did in the granny square, first working a chain of 2 in the corner space, and then in the next space I worked them up 5 loops on my hook, then kept this going until the other side of the top. I did this with the brown and white as well, but instead of cutting off after the white, I just went ahead and worked 2 single crochets around the border of the top into any gap that I could. Once I got to the back section, I just worked around 2 rows of single crochet before creating little gap sections on the 3rd row by chaining 2, skipping 2 stitches, and working into the 3rd stitch with a single crochet, then repeating this down the row again. For the 4th row, I just worked normal single crochets, making sure to add 2 single crochets into the gaps for the 4th row. Then after that section was done, I continued working the border with 2 single crochets into any gap. When I reached the top, I slip stitched to the first bubble stitch, then made these little ruffle things by chaining 3, and then slip stitching into the next stitch, and then repeating this around the entire top. Once I got to the end, I slip stitched and then chained 110 for one of the 2 chains that tie around my neck. I then repeated that on the other side. Then after that, created a chain of 181 so that I could use it for tying the back. I weaved in all my ends, and then the top was officially complete. Here is the result of Nicole's top from the summer I Turned Pretty, and I want to say that I haven't felt this disappointed in one of my pieces in such a long time. Like, it was to the point where my whole entire day was ruined. Like, I just felt so sad and disappointed. You're probably wondering why. This is how I wanted it to come out. Like, I want it to be cropped, I want it to be just like the top that she's wearing. I worked really hard in trying to figure out how to do the hexagons, because I've never done hexagons, let alone half hexagons like these. And so I really sat down and I looked and analyzed each of like how many stitches were in the hexagon, when does it cut off, and all that stuff, and I wrote that down. And then you saw, like, I worked so hard in figuring out these parts right here. Like, I was about to give up, but I kept going. Like, I was like set, like, okay, this is gonna be a top that it's gonna come out perfect and I get to wear it during the summer. It's the perfect recreation. I even chose smaller yarn for this because I knew I would need small yarn, but if you can see, this is how it came out. And this is not what I wanted. And the only reason this happened is because, yeah, I chose small yarn, but I needed to go even smaller apparently. When I tried this on, I was like, no, this is terrible. And I'm sure you're probably like, oh, it's not that bad or whatever, but to me it is. Like, I spent so much time like trying to figure this out just for it to come out like this. And like, I made these little bracket things right here so I can tie it, but I'm not even using it. Like, I had to really pull it together. Like, I was about to pull it right here to make it fit more, but that just makes these like scrunchy thing, or this mesh part right here, go even wider. I was so excited for this top and it just didn't come out the way that I wanted to. However, when I did scrunch it up like that, it does look a lot better to me. And I don't mind wearing it scrunched up like this, plus it hides the brackets that I didn't use. And if this is the case, then it kind of raises the score a little bit because it looks more like the one she's wearing, but you shouldn't have to do that, you know? It should have came out the way that it was supposed to. Therefore, if I were to rate this, I would give it a 6 out of 10 Red Sox hats, just because it's not the length that I wanted it to. And the mesh parts, even though I did spend a lot of time working on it, they're just too exposing, so I have to wear nipple covers. But the good part of the score is that I really took my time and I worked hard on this, so I'm very bittersweet about it. Like, I was really disappointed in it, but now that I have it like folded, it looks a lot better, but like, I shouldn't have to fold it. But yeah, this is Nicole's top, and let me know what you think. So I actually had a fourth project that I worked on for this episode, which was based on a cute beach set that Alex wore in an episode of Totally Spies, but I decided to not include it since I realized I wanted this episode to be crochet only. Plus, I ended up not liking the result of the set at all. I think it's really cute, but I just didn't want to include it. I'll probably still post photos of it on Pinterest and Instagram, but I just don't think it's worthy enough to have a spot on the episode. But thank you for watching through this episode if you've made it all this way. Thank you again to Milanote for sponsoring this episode, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!